The situation is evolving, as we know. Details are still emerging. But as the criminal justice expert here, as the former FBI agent, what do you think's missing from the national conversation on these acts?
Well, I think what's missing is a discussion of the signature. You have certain elements that create risks. You have statements being made, the EVs being used. You have peer-to-peer networks being used where there's not the same kind of due diligence that's applied in many other situations. I'm talking specifically about Airbnb and Turo, and I'm not putting down those services. I mean, I just came back from an Airbnb, so believe me, I understand that there's value there. However, these kinds of relationships create vulnerabilities, create security risks, and I expect to see more of that. I think that unfortunately, freedom has a cost, and sometimes the cost is unbearable for some of us.
To your point, I've stayed in an Airbnb as well. And when you zoom out for a second, and you realize, hey, I'm staying in someone's house. On the other hand, hey, someone is trusting, if I was renting out my apartment as an Airbnb, hey, I'm trusting this random stranger to stay in my home. Same thing with Turo and vehicles there. Do you think there needs to be more regulations on these types of apps?
Well, I'm going to say an unpopular thing, Miss Lewis, so forgive me, but I think more regulation is appropriate. I know that's not popular in many circles because people can't see the value. People see regulation as solely a cost, but regulation uh, is accompanied by detective controls. That is, who can rent these things? What kind of backgrounds do they have? Preventive controls. We're not going to allow people to just rent vehicles with such a driver's license and a credit card. That's all you need. And, that's the function of the regulator to work out the right balance of detective and preventive controls so that the public is adequately protected.
That's a really interesting point. I know the two suspects, as of now, details suggest that both of them have military experience. Do you think anything, let's say there was a background check to rent a vehicle, do you think the details we know now, anything would have been a red flag on a Turo potential type of background check?
Well, certainly there's the potential of that. I mean, I can't speak to their specific backgrounds because I'm not really sure, especially with respect to the Las Vegas individual. However, the value of having this routinized, of having a database, of having it formalized, is that patterns develop. So we could know perhaps whether Livelsberger or Jabbar were involved in maybe suspect or risk uh, enhancing activities. As of now, it's just pot luck. It's just dependent on maybe how desperate the renting agent is. It's too chaotic. It has to be formalized, and that's the advantage of regulation, of establishing a database, of know your customer, and I think that would be a good thing for society.
This was a really scary way, obviously, to start the new year, to start 2025, seeing a definite terror attack, a possible terror attack all across the country. Do you think, as of now, based on what we're seeing, that law enforcement missed anything?
Oh, I can't say that with any degree of certainty. Um, who knows? But these kinds of events are inherently unpredictable. And that's why we need a public and a law enforcement and an intelligence community that are working together and on guard. That's not to say live your life paranoid and scared, but you know, we have to recognize our vulnerabilities. We have to recognize that our freedoms create opportunities for others, and that we're not always going to be on somebody's best pal list, right? We're all in the same boat in many respects. We all go to places like Vegas and New Orleans and don't expect to be subjected to horrible activities in our lives at risk and so forth. So, in order to make that happen, we have to cooperate in a system that gets enough information so that the risks are adequately reduced. I'm not talking about doing away with, risk with possibility. I'm just talking about reducing risks to a minimum, to an acceptable minimum.